This is an NBC News special report. Here's Kate Snow.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're back now with more breaking news on President Trump's surprise trip to Iraq on this day after Christmas to visit with American troops. The president traveled from Washington with First Lady Melania Trump last night to the Al-Assad Air Base, which is west of Baghdad. On the ground there, the president said he has no plans at all to remove troops from Iraq. The president did speak to the troops there about U.S. military advances against ISIS.
The other reason I'm here today is to personally thank you and every service member throughout this region for the near elimination of the ISIS territorial caliphate in Iraq and in Syria. 2 years ago, when I became president, they were a very dominant group. They were very dominant. Today, they're not so dominant anymore. Great job. I looked at a map, and 2 years ago it was a lot of red all over that map. And now you have a couple little spots, and that's happening very quickly. That's happening very quickly. You'll be seeing that. I want to just say great job, and we'll be watching ISIS very closely.
The First Lady also traveled with the president. Earlier, the two met with military commanders, also the ambassador in Iraq. And here's a bit more of what the president said to reporters when he was asked about his own security.
One more.
Did you have any concerns about coming here today?
Absolutely. When I heard what you had to go through. I mean, look, I had concerns for the institution of the presidency. Because, not for myself personally. I had concerns for the First Lady, I will tell you. But if you would have seen what we had to go through with the darkened plane, with all windows closed, with no lights on whatsoever, anywhere, pitch black, I've never seen it. I've been in many airplanes, all types and shapes and sizes. I've never seen anything like it. We're coming in, and I know all of the things that were surrounding us for safety. So did I have a concern? Yeah, I had a concern. But my bigger concern was maybe the people that were with me, certainly all of them, except I think John Bolton. He's a pretty tough guy. He can handle it, right, John? John can handle it. And by the way, John and I agree on all of this. And
There were about 20 minutes of questions there. We're just getting that first bit in. So let's go to our chief White House correspondent, Hallie Jackson, who's been watching all this and getting the reports from overseas. Hallie, this was a big trip for the president and first lady. Yeah. It's his first time meeting with active duty military.
Right, in a combat zone, Kate, and it's significant in that the president had come under fire for not having done that last year around the holidays or this year so far, either at Thanksgiving or on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. We now know, of course, that late in the evening on Christmas, he got on his plane on Air Force One and shrouded in secrecy, as you heard him talk about, with those window shades darkened, he flew overseas to make this trip. The big news coming out of this, Kate, I think relates to two things. The president saying he has no plans at all right now to draw any troops out of Iraq, and he defended his decision to do just that in Syria. That was a controversial decision. It is part of why the defense secretary, Jim Mattis, decided to abruptly resign just recently. That, plus the president asking for plans to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. But the president, in speaking with these military members and commanders and with members in the media, said, we're no longer the suckers. That's his words. He says, we are now more respected as a nation because of that decision to pull troops out of Syria. He believes that ultimately with time, people will come around to this decision. He also added that Iraq could still be used as a base from which to fight ISIS, saying if we see something happening with ISIS terrorists that we don't like, we can hit them so fast and so hard, quote, they really won't know what the hell happened. The president spent about 3 hours at this base, at Al-Assad base in the western part of Iraq. His movements, of course, were absolutely covered in secrecy for these security reasons. But you can see with the holiday decorations sort of pinned up there at the base, people were posing for selfies, the president smiling, shaking hands. We've seen some of this video come in of the president signing what looked to be those red Make America Great Again ball caps as well. We should note here the president now follows his predecessors in what has become really a holiday tradition for commanders-in-chief, as you see some of that video there. At this point in his presidency, Barack Obama had visited troops in war zones in the Middle East. George W. Bush visited Iraq just 8 months after the war there began in 2003 as well. So all of this is coming, Kate, at a pretty critical time for the Pentagon. Secretary Mattis set to leave the building January 1st. His number 2 steps up, Patrick Shanahan, and the president said today he's in no rush to name a replacement. Kate?
Hallie Jackson at the White House. The president also was asked about the shutdown, the government shutdown, saying whatever it takes, we're going to have a wall. I want to bring in NBC News military analyst and retired U.S. General Barry McCaffrey, who joins us now. Talk about the situation on the ground where he was. He's talking to these troops who are serving in Iraq. As Hallie mentioned, he says he's not going to draw down any troops there, but he certainly made news a week ago when he announced that troops in Syria would be coming home.
Well, I think it's a very good trip for him to make. It'll be widely appreciated by the troops. You could hear genuine enthusiasm on the part of those soldiers talking about the enormous success we have had in very muscular use of air power and direct combat forces in both Syria and Iraq against ISIS. So I think it was a good trip. I think taking along Melania added another good note to it. And politically, of course, it's very helpful to him. He's in a very awkward position, not having been to either war zone for the past 2 years. So all in all, a step forward for President Trump.
General McCaffrey, Hallie Jackson at the White House, thank you both so much. There's another big story we're also following, by the way, on Wall Street right now. The markets closed just a short time ago. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up over 1,000 points. That is a big change from the day before Christmas. It is the largest one-day point gain in history, representing a gain of almost 5%. We're going to have more on all of these stories and all the day's news when we join you in just a bit for NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Kate Snow, NBC News in New York.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.